He mocked me in front of his friends for not having a job. They didn't know I owned the company they all worked for until I fired them. I stayed silent through another evening of their cruel jokes. Can't even land an entry-level position, my husband James laughed, clinking glasses with his colleagues. The irony was delicious. I'd hired the firm that headhunted each of them. Tomorrow that same firm would help me clean house. The crystal glass felt cool against my palm as I watched them from across our marble-floored living room. 5 men in tailored suits, all senior executives at Reynolds Technologies, all handpicked by me through layers of shell companies and discreet hiring firms. And James, my husband of 8 years, their VP of operations, leading the chorus of mockery. Remember when she tried interviewing at Reynolds? James continued, loosening his Hermes tie. God, I wish I could have seen that train wreck. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. If you're enjoying these stories of empowerment, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us build this amazing community. Let's dive in. If only he knew. That interview had been my quarterly inspection of middle management, carefully orchestrated through my labyrinth of holding companies. I'd built Reynolds Technologies from the ground up 12 years ago before I even met James. The company had been my first love, my redemption after watching my father's small business crumble under corporate raiders. At least she's persistent, chuckled Michael from marketing. How many rejections this month, James? Lost count, James smirked, reaching for the 30-year-old scotch I'd bought. My scotch. Everything in this house. The art on the walls, the imported furniture, even the fancy watch on his wrist. All paid for by the company he thought had rejected me. I took another sip of water, maintaining my practiced mask of quiet humiliation. The same mask I'd worn when I first met James at a charity gala. Back then I'd already learned the hard way that success attracted parasites. 3 failed relationships with men who saw me as their ticket to luxury had taught me caution. So when I met James, I decided to experiment. I presented myself as a struggling freelance consultant, driving a modest car and living in a small apartment. James had seemed different at first. Supportive even. You'll find your place, he'd said in those early days. Just keep trying. But as soon as we married and he moved into what he thought was our house, the mask began to slip. Success changed him, or rather revealed him. Hey honey, James called out now, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Maybe you should try the coffee shop down the street? I heard they're hiring baristas. More laughter. I forced a weak smile, playing my role perfectly. Inside, I was reviewing the documentation my private investigators had compiled over the past year. The unofficial meetings with competitors. The inflated expense reports. The small but steady leaks of company information that always seemed to benefit James's personal stock portfolio. I think I'll head upstairs, I said softly, playing the part of the defeated wife. Big day tomorrow, another interview. Don't wait up, sweetie, James called after me. We're celebrating Peterson's promotion. Might be a late one. Peterson, my latest plant in senior management. Tomorrow he would be the one documenting their alcohol-loose conversations, adding to the evidence we'd been gathering. In my private study, locked away from their drunken voices, I settled behind my desk. The hidden wall panel slid open silently, revealing my secure workspace. 3 monitors sprang to life, displaying Reynolds Technologies' real-time operations across the globe. A small empire, built through years of careful strategy and ironclad NDAs. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, my most trusted executive and one of the few who knew my true identity. Final documentation in place. Board members briefed. Tomorrow's meeting confirmed. I smiled, thinking of the carefully orchestrated revelation to come. The board had always known me as Alexandra Chin, the reclusive founder who communicated through encrypted video calls. Tomorrow they would meet their CEO in person for the first time, not as the mysterious figure behind the screen, but as James's unemployable wife. My fingers traced the edge of the termination papers on my desk. Not just for James but for every member of his little drinking club. Each document backed by months of evidence, reviewed by our legal team ironclad. The sound of breaking glass echoed from downstairs, followed by raucous laughter. Time was when such careless disrespect for my home would have angered me. Now it just added another piece to the documentation. Inappropriate use of company property for personal entertainment. I closed my eyes, letting the familiar hum of computers wash over me. Tomorrow would change everything. But tonight, I savored the calm before the storm, remembering my father's words. Success isn't about who has the biggest voice in the room, it's about who has the wisdom to wait, watch, and pick the perfect moment to act. The perfect moment had finally arrived. I heard James and his friends stumbling out to their waiting cars, their drivers, my employees, discreetly documenting their intoxicated state with dashboard cameras. More evidence for their files. I changed into my night clothes, the same modest pajamas I'd worn for years as part of my facade. One last night of pretense. Tomorrow I would wake up as James's underestimated wife. But by sunset I would be revealed as Alexandra Chin, CEO of Reynolds Technologies, and the architect of their downfall. Through the bedroom window I watched their cars disappear into the night. In 12 hours they would arrive at their offices, nursing hangovers, completely unaware that their world was about to implode. The thought brought a small smile to my face as I drifted off to sleep, dreaming of tomorrow's sweet revelation. Morning arrived with the precision of a well-orchestrated plan. I woke before James, watching him struggle with his hangover as he rushed to prepare for what he thought would be a normal day at the office. Little did he know I had arrived at Reynolds Technologies long before him. At 6:30 a.m., I entered through the service entrance, dressed in an intentionally unremarkable navy suit from a department store, a far cry from my usual designer wardrobe. Sarah met me in the basement security office, away from prying eyes. "Everything's in place," she murmured, handing me a visitor's badge. "The interview is scheduled for 9 a.m. with HR. James's team has their regular morning meeting at the same time. Peterson will keep them occupied." The visitor's badge felt strange against my blazer. Angela Martinez, interview candidate. For years I'd observed my company through cameras and reports. But today's performance needed a personal touch. A chance to witness firsthand how deep the rot had spread. I sat in the lobby, purposefully arriving an hour early, the eager candidate desperate to impress. The security guard barely glanced at me, too busy greeting the stream of executives arriving for their day of reckoning. I watched James stride through the lobby at 8:45, not even noticing me behind my prop reading material, the company's own annual report. "Ms. Martinez?" The HR representative, Thomas, appeared right on schedule. I recognized him from his hiring file, competent, but too eager to please the executive team. "Please follow me." The elevator ride to the HR floor was filled with the kind of small talk I'd engineered through our corporate culture initiatives. Great weather we're having, and traffic wasn't too bad this morning. All while employees nodded politely at the woman they assumed was just another hopeful candidate. Thomas led me through the open office layout I'd designed years ago. "We'll start with a brief skills assessment," he explained, followed by a panel interview with some of our team leaders. His tone carried that subtle condescension reserved for candidates they'd already decided not to hire. The skills assessment was almost insulting in its simplicity, basic coding problems I could have solved in my sleep. I deliberately made small mistakes, playing the role of the nervous applicant. Through the glass walls I could see James and his cohorts in their morning meeting, laughing about something. Probably another candidate they'd decided to toy with. "Well," Thomas said, reviewing my intentionally flawed work, "this is interesting." His pause spoke volumes. "Let's move on to the panel interview." The conference room he led me to overlooked the city. A view I usually enjoyed from my private office 20 floors above. 3 middle managers waited inside, all wearing the same expression of bored superiority. I recognized each face from their personnel files, knew their salaries, their performances, their secrets. "So, Ms. Martinez," began the first interviewer, not even bothering to introduce himself, "I see you've been between positions for some time." "Yes," I replied softly, adding a slight tremor to my voice. "It's been challenging in this market." "And what makes you think you're qualified for a position at Reynolds Technologies?" The second interviewer barely looked up from his phone as he asked. I launched into the carefully crafted story we'd prepared, a mix of genuine qualifications masked by apparent desperation. With each response I watched them grow more dismissive. They'd already decided my fate, just as they'd done to countless other qualified candidates who didn't fit their preconceptions. Through the glass walls I could see James passing by. He did a double take, then smirked, pulling out his phone. Moments later the interviewers' phones buzzed simultaneously. I didn't need to see their screens to know he was messaging them about his wife's latest embarrassing attempt at employment. The rest of the interview was a masterclass in corporate cruelty. Subtle jabs, exchanged glances, barely concealed yawns. I documented every microaggression, every breach of our HR policies, while maintaining my facade of nervous optimism. "Thank you for your time," Thomas said finally, his tone making it clear there would be no second interview. "We'll be in touch." As I walked toward the elevator, I heard James's voice around the corner. "No way, that was your wife? Man, she really is desperate. Did you see her suit? Probably from Target." I kept walking, letting their laughter fuel what was to come. In my purse, my real phone buzzed with messages from Sarah. Board members arriving early. Legal team standing by. Security ready to escort. The final piece of my charade was about to begin. I ducked into a restroom, entering the last stall where Sarah had hidden a garment bag earlier that morning. Inside was my real armor. A meticulously tailored Chanel suit, Louboutin heels, and the CEO's security badge I'd never worn in public. As I transformed from Angela Martinez, failed job candidate, to Alexandra Chen, CEO of Reynolds Technologies, their mocking laughter still echoed in my mind. In 30 minutes I would walk into the boardroom not as a supplicant, but as their ultimate superior. I checked my reflection one last time, adjusting the pearl necklace that had been my mother's. "Success is silent," she used to say, "until the perfect moment to roar." That moment was finally here. I stepped out of the restroom as Alexandra Chen for the first time in my own building, watching employees' eyes widen as they struggled to reconcile the confident executive before them with the nervous interviewee from moments ago. Let them stare. The real show was about to begin. The click of my Louboutins against the marble floor announced each step toward the executive floor. Employees scrambled to clear my path, their confusion palpable as they tried to place my familiar yet transformed face. The whispers started immediately, word of the mysterious CEO's presence spreading like wildfire through the building's messaging systems. I took the private elevator, the one James had always wondered about, installed for the Phantom CEO's exclusive use. As I ascended, Sarah's text confirmed everything was in place. Board members seated. James and team still in their morning briefing. Security standing by. The elevator opened directly into the boardroom's antechamber. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouettes of our board members, all aware of what was about to unfold. But first I had a different meeting to attend. I turned left, heading toward the executive conference room where James and his inner circle were celebrating their latest victories. Standing in the shadows of the hallway, I could hear their voices clearly through the door left carelessly ajar. "You should have seen her face during the interview," James was saying, his voice carrying that smug tone I'd grown to despise. "My own wife thinking she could actually land a position here. I mean, what's next? Trying to become CEO?" Raucous laughter followed. "Classic case of delusions of grandeur," Michael from marketing added. "Remember when she tried giving us advice about the Thompson account at your birthday party?" "Oh God, that was priceless," another voice chimed in. "Telling us how we should restructure our client approach. Like she has any idea how this business works." The irony was exquisite. The Thompson account had been my strategy, carefully fed through intermediaries. It had saved the company millions and earned us 3 additional major clients. Should we tell her she failed the interview or let HR do the dirty work? James asked, triggering another round of laughter. It was time. I stepped into the doorway, my presence casting a shadow across their morning coffees. The laughter died instantly. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying the authority of 12 years of leadership, "I think I'll deliver that news myself." The shock on their faces was everything I'd imagined and more. James's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth, his face draining of color as he struggled to reconcile his wife's appearance with the aura of absolute authority I now projected. What are you doing here?" he stammered. "And dressed like the CEO of Reynolds Technologies?" I finished for him, stepping fully into the room. "Exactly like that, as a matter of fact." Michael started to laugh, then stopped abruptly when no one joined him. Peterson, my planted executive, was already gathering his things, a knowing smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "This is a restricted floor," James tried, attempting to regain some control. "Security will be here any minute." "They're already here," I replied calmly as two security officers appeared behind me. Though not for the reason you think. I pulled out my phone, sending a single text. Immediately, every screen in the conference room lit up with a single document. The company's original incorporation papers, bearing my signature and photo. Alexandra Chin, I announced, watching their faces contort as the realization hit them. Founder and CEO of Reynolds Technologies. Or as you know me, James's unemployable wife. The silence was deafening. James's face had progressed from white to green, his eyes darting between my face and the documents displaying his wife of 8 years as the owner of everything he'd bragged about building. "This is impossible," he whispered. "You're just what, James? Just your wife? Just someone who couldn't even land an entry-level position?" I moved to the head of the table, my table, and sat down. "Tell me, how does it feel to realize you've been mocking your own boss for years?" Michael stood up suddenly, his chair screeching against the floor. "I should go." "Sit down," I commanded, my voice cutting through his panic. "None of you are going anywhere just yet." I pressed another button on my phone. The screens changed to display a compilation, security footage, email exchanges, recorded conversations. Every joke, every mockery, every moment of cruelty played out in high definition. "An interesting management style you've developed," I observed, watching them squirm. "Creating a culture of bullying, discrimination, and harassment. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't care how you treated people you thought were beneath you?" "Alex, honey," James tried, his voice taking on the placating tone he used when trying to talk his way out of trouble. "We can explain." "Oh, I think you've explained enough," I cut him off. "In fact, you've been explaining for years. Every dinner party, every social gathering, every company event. You've made your character crystal clear." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "The board is waiting next door to formalize what you've already accomplished yourselves, your immediate termination for cause. All of you." I looked each man in the eye, saving James for last. "Though I suppose I should thank you. You've made this decision remarkably easy." "You can't do this," James protested weakly. "I'm your husband." "Actually," I smiled, removing my wedding ring and placing it on the table, "as of this morning I'm just your C. And you're fired." The security officers stepped forward as I turned to leave. Behind me I could hear the beginnings of protests, of threats, of desperate bargaining. But I was already walking away, heading toward the boardroom where the real work of cleaning house would begin. After all, I had a company to run. The board meeting was swift and decisive. 12 pairs of eyes watched as I signed the official termination documents, their expressions a mixture of admiration and shock at finally meeting their elusive CEO in person. But the real work was just beginning. As security escorted James and his cohorts from the building, I retreated to my private office, the mysterious top-floor suite that had spawned so many rumors over the years. Sarah followed, tablet in hand, ready to execute the next phase of our plan. "Their access has been revoked," she reported, swiping through security protocols. "IT is freezing their accounts and backing up all data. Legal has already sent cease and desist orders to prevent any retaliation attempts." I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching James and his friends being escorted to their cars below. Even from 20 stories up, I could read the shock in their body language, the disbelief in their stumbling steps. "What about the house?" I asked, thinking of the home James thought he'd helped pay for. "The security team is already there, changing the locks. Your personal items have been moved to the penthouse as planned. As for James's things," Sarah paused, allowing herself a small smile, "they'll be delivered to his mother's house by this evening." I nodded, remembering all the times James had bragged to his mother about supporting me through my career struggles. The irony would not be lost on her. "And the divorce papers?" "Being filed as we speak. The prenup you had him sign is ironclad." He thought he was protecting his assets, never realizing he was signing away any claim to yours. A notification popped up on my private screen. James was already trying to damage control, posting on professional networks about strategic differences with Reynolds Technologies management. I watched as Sarah's team swiftly countered with the truth. A carefully worded press release about the company's zero-tolerance policy for workplace harassment and discrimination. "His LinkedIn profile still lists him as VP of Operations," I noted. Sarah's fingers flew across her tablet. "Not anymore." I sat down at my desk. my real desk, not the hidden one in my study at home, and began reviewing the contingency plans we'd prepared. James and his friends weren't stupid. Wounded pride would soon give way to anger and potential retaliation. Their non-competes? Already activated. They won't be working in this industry for at least 3 years. We've also notified all major competitors about the circumstances of their termination. No reputable company will touch them. I pulled up the security footage from their exit interviews. James still in denial, threatening to expose me. Michael breaking down in tears when he realized his stock options were worthless. The others alternating between begging and threats. Their projects. Peterson has already assembled transition teams. No critical operations will be affected. Sarah paused. Though I suggest we audit everything they've touched in the last year. Make it 3 years, I corrected, remembering snippets of drunken conversations about creative accounting. And flag any clients they've had personal contact with. My phone buzzed, James using his personal number. I declined the call, watching as it joined the growing list of blocked numbers. His friends had been trying too, probably hoping to negotiate some kind of settlement. Should we issue a company-wide statement? Sarah asked. I considered the ripple effects moving through the building. By now, everyone would know that their mysterious SO was James's supposedly unemployable wife. The story would be spreading through every department, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Schedule an all-hands meeting for tomorrow morning, I decided. It's time they met their real CO, not the caricature James created. A subtle alert flashed on my screen. James had arrived at his mother's house. The security feed showed him standing among boxes of his belongings, his mother's expression moving from confusion to horror as he explained the morning's events. His company car? GPS shows it's still in our parking lot. Security is waiting to retrieve it. I nodded, turning to the stack of documents requiring immediate attention. Organizational charts needed updating, responsibilities needed reassigning, and damage control needed to begin with our major clients. One more thing, Sarah added, her tone softening slightly. The charity gala next month. The one where you met James. Cancel my RSVP, I interrupted. But double the company's donation. Anonymously. The afternoon passed in a blur of meetings, decisions, and strategic planning. I watched through various security feeds as James's office was packed up, his personal items cataloged and shipped out. His parking space, the one he'd bragged about to everyone, was already reassigned. By evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Sarah brought me one final report. They're all serving their garden leave at home. Security is monitoring their communications. No unusual activities yet, but they're in shock, I finished. Give them a day. Then the real reactions will begin. I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself to feel the weight of the day. In less than 12 hours, I'd shed a false identity, ended a marriage, fired 5 executives, and stepped into the public eye as CEO. Was it worth it? Sarah asked quietly, breaking protocol for a moment of honesty. I thought about years of subtle humiliation, of watching James and his friends crush other people's dreams for sport, of witnessing their casual cruelty to everyone they deemed beneath them. Ask me again in a week, I replied, turning back to my monitors. There was still work to be done, a company to run, and a reputation to rebuild. After all, revenge wasn't just about one dramatic moment. It was about ensuring they never recovered enough to hurt anyone else again. The next morning arrived with a flurry of activity. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m., but I arrived at the office at dawn. There was strategic maneuvering to be done before addressing the troops. We've got movement, Sarah reported, striding into my office with her ever-present tablet. James tried to contact the Thompson account at 3 a.m. Fortunately, we had already locked down all client communications. I pulled up the monitoring dashboard on my screen. In the 12 hours since their termination, each of the fired executives had made predictable moves. Michael had tried to download client lists before his access was revoked. Peterson, my planted executive, had documented every attempt. Their severance packages? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Voided due to documented misconduct. Legal has compiled a thorough brief. Sarah's fingers flew across her tablet. James tried to access his investment accounts at midnight. He seemed surprised to learn that his stock options were worthless. I smiled, remembering all the times he'd bragged about his company shares at dinner parties. He'd never bothered to read the fine print about misconduct clauses. What about the others? 2 have already reached out to competitors. We've documented the attempts. Clear violations of their non-compete agreements. Sarah paused. And James's mother has been quite vocal on social media about her daughter-in-law's betrayal. I pulled up the social media monitoring feed. The story was spreading, but not in the way James had probably hoped. Former employees were coming forward with their own stories of harassment and discrimination. Each post reinforced our narrative of necessary corporate housecleaning. Time for the next move, I announced, pulling up a carefully prepared email. With one click, I sent invitations to one-on-one meetings with every employee who had reported to James and his inner circle. That's going to cause some anxiety, Sarah observed. Good. I want them off balance. I stood, smoothing my skirt. Have security do another sweep of James's office. Check for any hidden documents or devices. The morning unfolded like a well-played chess game. While James and his friends were presumably nursing their wounds and plotting revenge, we were systematically dismantling their corporate legacy. At 9:45, I stood before the mirror in my private bathroom, making final adjustments to my appearance. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the meek wife James had mocked for years. Today's armor was a steel-gray Armani suit, accessorized with quiet but unmistakable power. The auditorium is full, Sarah reported. Everyone's waiting. I nodded, gathering my thoughts. Start the recording. The all-hands meeting would be documented for legal purposes, and to ensure our message reached every employee across all time zones. As I walked onto the stage, the hushed whispers died immediately. Good morning, I began, my voice carrying easily through the sound system. I'm Alexandra Chin, founder and CEO of Reynolds Technologies. Some of you knew me as James Morrison's wife. Today you'll know me as your leader. The silence was absolute. In the front row, I could see the HR team squirming, probably remembering yesterday's sham interview. Yesterday we terminated 5 executives for cause. You've all heard the rumors. Yes, one was my husband. Yes, it was because of documented misconduct, harassment, and abuse of power. I paused, letting that sink in. But today isn't about them. It's about us. About the company we're going to be moving forward. For the next hour, I outlined my vision for Reynolds Technologies. With each point, I systematically dismantled the toxic culture James and his friends had fostered. New reporting structures, enhanced HR protocols, anonymous feedback channels, each announcement a calculated move in our corporate chess game. Finally, I concluded, my door is open. Not metaphorically, literally. Starting today, any employee can schedule time with me directly. No gatekeepers, no filters. The applause that followed was tentative at first, then growing stronger. As I left the stage, Sarah showed me her tablet. The company's internal messaging system was exploding with positive responses. Back in my office, the next phase began. One by one, I met with James's former direct reports. Each conversation was a delicate balance of reassurance and assessment, identifying potential allies and threats. James called again, Sarah reported between meetings. This time from a burner phone. He's demanding a private meeting. Document it with legal, I replied, reviewing the notes from my last meeting. And check his mother's social media. She usually telegraphs his next move. By late afternoon, the corporate chessboard had shifted dramatically. 3 of James's most loyal managers had resigned rather than adapt to the new regime. 2 others had provided valuable information about past misconduct in exchange for amnesty. The Thompson account called, Sarah announced. They want to meet the real CEO. I smiled, remembering James's mockery of my suggestions about their account. Schedule it for tomorrow. And send them the presentation I've been working on. The one James rejected last month. A notification popped up on my screen. James had been spotted at a bar with Michael and 2 other former executives. Our surveillance team was monitoring their conversation. They're plotting something, Sarah observed. Of course they are, I replied, pulling up contingency plans we'd prepared months ago. Let them plot. Every move they make just gives us more ammunition. I turned to the window, watching the sunset paint the city skyline. Somewhere out there, 5 angry men were discovering just how thoroughly they'd been outmaneuvered. But their game had ended yesterday. Mine was just beginning. Tomorrow, I told Sarah, we start phase 2. Let's see how they handle being the ones looking for jobs. After all, in chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. And I had been playing this game long before they even knew they were pieces. Dawn found me reviewing surveillance footage from the bar where James and his cohorts had gathered. Their angry conversations, fueled by expensive scotch, had provided exactly the evidence we needed to strengthen our legal position. They're planning to sue, Sarah announced, entering my office with 2 coffee cups. James contacted 3 law firms this morning. I accepted the coffee, hiding my smile. Show me. She pulled up the morning's surveillance report. James had indeed been busy, but each firm he'd contacted was already subtly connected to Reynolds Technologies through various shell companies. Any attempts to retain them would hit an immediate conflict of interest wall. He's also been reaching out to our major clients, Sarah continued. Particularly the Thompson account. Forward me the recordings. The audio files played through my private speaker system. James's voice, still carrying that entitled confidence, trying to convince our clients that he'd been wrongfully terminated. That his wife had manipulated her way into power. That the company was in danger under my leadership. Mr. Thompson's response? I asked, though I could guess. Sarah played the next clip. Thompson's voice was cold. James, your wife's proposal last week was brilliant. The one you dismissed? Yeah, we found out about that. Don't contact us again. I pulled up our evidence database on my secure terminal. For over a year, we'd been building an airtight case against James and his inner circle. Every harassment incident, every discriminatory comment, every abuse of power, all meticulously documented. The board wants an update, Sarah noted. They're concerned about potential blowback. Schedule a meeting for this afternoon. And bring me everything from the last 3 years, emails, meeting recordings, expense reports. It's time to show them exactly why this house cleaning was necessary. The morning unfolded in a series of strategic moves. While James and his friends were burning through their savings on legal consultations, we were systematically fortifying our position. HR provided a thick file of complaints that had been buried under the previous management. IT extracted emails that had been accidentally deleted. Former employees began reaching out, offering testimonies about the toxic culture they'd fled. James's mother is escalating her social media campaign, Sarah reported. She's claiming you seduced him as part of a long-term corporate takeover plan. I laughed, pulling up the prenuptial agreement James had insisted upon. Send her lawyers a copy of this. The one her son demanded to protect his assets from his apparently gold-digging wife. By midday, our legal team had compiled a devastating brief. Every instance of James bragging about manipulating stock options, every recorded conversation about sidelining qualified female candidates, every documented abuse of company resources, all presented in damning detail. The surveillance team picked up something interesting, Sarah said, rushing into my office after lunch. They met with someone from our competitor Atlas Tech last night. I pulled up the footage. Through the high-end microphones we'd planted, James could be heard offering to reveal company secrets in exchange for executive positions for himself and his friends. Send copies to their lawyers, I instructed. And to Atlas Tech's board. Let's see how quickly they distance themselves. The afternoon board meeting was a masterclass in corporate strategy. One by one, I presented evidence of why each terminated executive had to go. The board's concerns melted away as they realized the extent of the corruption we'd excised. There's more, I announced, pulling up financial records. We've traced irregular payments through their expense accounts. The SEC would be very interested in some of these transactions. James is on his way up, Sarah interrupted, checking her tablet. He somehow convinced the lobby security to let him in. I smiled, pulling up the lobby camera feed. No, I convinced security to let him in. Watch. On the screen, James stormed through the lobby, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. He was clutching a folder that undoubtedly contained what he thought was damaging information. Should I have security stop him? Sarah asked. Not yet. Let's see what he thinks he has. Minutes later, James burst into the boardroom, his triumphant expression faltering as he saw me calmly seated at the head of the table. I have proof, he announced, waving his folder. Proof that she orchestrated this whole thing. You mean proof that I founded this company? Built it from nothing? Ran it successfully while you took credit for my strategies. I stood slowly. Or proof that I documented your misconduct for years while you mocked my supposed unemployment? The board members watched silently as James's confidence crumbled. You trapped me, he stammered. No, James. You trapped yourself. Every time you belittled a candidate, every time you pushed aside a qualified woman, every time you laughed about your unemployed wife. You built this case against yourself. I nodded to Sarah, who pulled up our complete evidence file on the room's screens. James watched in horror as years of his misconduct played out in high definition. Your choices, I continued calmly, are simple. Leave now, respect the non-compete agreement and keep whatever dignity you have left. Or fight, and watch as every detail of your behavior becomes public record. You can't. He began. Security, I interrupted, pressing a button on my desk. Please escort Mr. Morrison out. And this time revoke his lobby access. As security led him away, I turned back to the board. Now about those irregular financial transactions. The rest of the afternoon was spent strengthening our legal position. Every piece of evidence was catalogued, every testimony recorded, every document notarized. By evening, we had built a case so solid that no law firm would touch James's claims with a 10-foot pole. They're meeting again tonight, Sarah reported as darkness fell. Same bar. Good, I replied, reviewing the latest surveillance request. Let's hear what other evidence they're willing to give us. After all, the best case is built by letting your opponents think they're winning. Right until the moment they lose everything. The bar surveillance proved more valuable than we could have hoped. Drunk on expensive whiskey and wounded pride, James and his friends spent hours inadvertently confessing to years of corporate malfeasance. Play that section again, I instructed Sarah the next morning, leaning forward in my chair. Through our high-quality surveillance feed, James's slurred voice filled my office. Remember that merger last year? The one that made us look like geniuses? Well, let me tell you how we really pulled that off. What followed was a detailed confession of insider trading, complete with names, dates, and dollar amounts. Send this to legal, I ordered. And notify the SEC anonymously. It's time to create our perfect storm. Sarah's fingers flew across her tablet. James has already started selling his personal stocks. The others are following suit. Perfect. I pulled up our contingency plans. Activate Protocol Thunder. Protocol Thunder was the culmination of months of planning. A carefully orchestrated series of events designed to trap James and his cohorts in their own web of deceit. The first phase began immediately. Leak the merger investigation to the financial press, I instructed. But make it seem like it came from a concerned former employee. Within hours, the story hit the business news networks. Reynolds Technologies' stock took a small hit, exactly as planned. James and his friends, already paranoid and watching their investments, would see it as an opportunity to save themselves. They're panicking, Sarah reported, monitoring their phone calls. All 5 of them are calling their broker simultaneously. I watched the trading monitors as they frantically sold their shares, trying to get ahead of what they thought was coming. With each sale, they dug themselves deeper into legal jeopardy. Now, I said, nodding to Sarah. Release Phase 2. The press release went out company-wide and to all major news outlets. Reynolds Technologies was announcing a major restructuring and expansion. Our stock price shot up within minutes, but James and his friends had already sold at a loss. A clear case of attempted market manipulation based on insider knowledge. Mr. Thompson from the Antitrust Commission is on line 1, Sarah announced. I took the call on speaker. Alexandra Chin. Ms. Chin, we've received some very interesting information about last year's merger. Yes, we've been conducting an internal investigation, I replied smoothly. I'd be happy to share our findings, including some rather illuminating surveillance footage from a bar last night. The pieces were falling into place. By midday, the SEC had opened a formal investigation into James and his friends' trading activities. The Antitrust Commission was reviewing the merger. And our stock price was soaring as the market responded to our expansion announcement. James is trying to leave the country, Sarah reported, checking her surveillance feeds. His passport was mysteriously flagged at the airport. I allowed myself a small smile. How unfortunate. And the others? Michael is having a breakdown in his broker's office. 2 more are meeting with criminal defense lawyers. The last one is attempting to delete his email history. Not realizing we already have everything. The afternoon brought more developments. Our anonymous tips had sparked investigations at 3 other companies where James and his friends had previously worked. Former colleagues, sensing blood in the water, began coming forward with their own stories of misconduct. Their lawyers are requesting a meeting, Sarah announced. They're offering to settle. Decline, I replied, watching the latest news coverage. Let them sweat. By evening, the perfect storm was in full swing. The SEC investigation had expanded to include their personal trading accounts. The Antitrust Commission had frozen their assets pending review. And 3 separate class action lawsuits had been filed by former employees alleging systematic discrimination. James's mother has gone quiet on social media, Sarah noted with satisfaction. She probably saw the insider trading allegations, I replied. Even she can't spin that positively. A notification popped up on my screen. James was attempting to access his frozen accounts, growing increasingly desperate as each transaction was declined. Should we release the bar footage to the media? Sarah asked. Not yet. I stood walking to the window. Let's see how they handle tomorrow first. Tomorrow would bring the final phase of Protocol Thunder. While James and his friends were distracted by investigations and frozen assets, we had been quietly buying up their dumped shares through shell companies. When the market opened, Reynolds Technologies would announce a major government contract. One we'd been secretly negotiating for months. Their wives are calling divorce lawyers, Sarah reported, checking her tablet one last time for the day. Apparently, they're not happy about potentially losing everything due to their husband's fraud. I thought about the prenup James had insisted upon, thinking he was protecting himself from a gold-digging wife. How ironic that it would now protect my assets from his legal troubles. Send them all meeting invitations for tomorrow morning, I instructed. 9 a.m. sharp. They won't come, Sarah predicted. Oh, they will. I turned from the window, my reflection hard and clear in the darkening glass. Because right now, I'm their only hope of survival. As night fell over the city, I reviewed tomorrow's script one final time. In less than 12 hours, James and his friends would sit in my office, broken and desperate as I presented them with their options. The choice between total destruction and merely complete humiliation. Their security badges are ready, Sarah said, placing 5 visitor passes on my desk. I picked one up, running my thumb over James's photo. Tomorrow then. After all, the perfect storm wasn't just about destruction. It was about forcing your enemies to acknowledge the lightning before the thunder struck. 9 a.m. arrived with the precision of a well-orchestrated symphony. One by one, James and his former colleagues shuffled into my office, shadows of their former arrogant selves. Their expensive suits were wrinkled, their faces haggard from sleepless nights and mounting pressure. Gentlemen, I greeted them, seated behind my desk. I believe you've all had an interesting week. James couldn't meet my eyes. Michael was visibly trembling. The others stared at their visitor badges as if they couldn't quite believe how far they'd fallen. The board is waiting, I announced, standing. Shall we? They followed me like condemned men to the executive boardroom. Through the glass walls, they could see the full board of directors seated around the massive table, along with our legal team and several SEC representatives. Before we begin, I said, pausing at the door, I want you to understand something. What happens in the next hour will determine not just your professional futures, but your personal freedom. The boardroom fell silent as we entered. Sarah stood at the presentation screen ready to begin. The SEC representatives had their notebooks open, pens poised. Members of the board, distinguished guests, I began, taking my place at the head of the table. We're here today to address several serious matters concerning corporate governance, financial misconduct, and systematic abuse of power. With a nod to Sarah, the presentation began. On the screen, evidence of their misdeeds played out in devastating detail. Trading records, surveillance footage, email chains, recorded conversations, a complete catalog of their destruction. As you can see, I continued as James sank lower in his chair, the pattern of misconduct extends far beyond simple workplace harassment. We're looking at securities fraud, insider trading, and criminal conspiracy. The SEC representatives were taking rapid notes. The board members' faces had turned to stone. Michael looked ready to faint. However, I paused, letting the tension build. Reynolds Technologies is prepared to offer a limited amnesty agreement. One time, one offer, no negotiations. That got their attention. 5 heads snapped up, hope warring with suspicion in their eyes. Sarah distributed thick document folders to each of them. The terms are simple, I explained. Full cooperation with all investigations. Complete disclosure of all misconduct, whether previously discovered or not. Return of all profits from irregular trading activities. And most importantly, a public acknowledgement of your actions. You want us to confess? James found his voice, though it cracked on the last word. I want you to face the consequences of your choices, I corrected him. Sign these agreements now and Reynolds Technologies will not press criminal charges. Refuse and the SEC has enough evidence to ensure you all spend considerable time in federal prison. The board members watched impassively as the 5 men frantically flipped through their documents. Their lawyers seated behind them were already nodding grimly. You have 5 minutes to decide, I announced, checking my watch. After that, this offer expires and we proceed with full prosecution. The next few minutes were filled with desperate whispers between the men and their lawyers. I could see the exact moment each one broke, their signatures appearing on the documents one by one. James was last, his hand trembling as he scrawled his name. Our eyes met as he pushed the folder across the table. In his, I saw the final death of his arrogance, the complete understanding of how thoroughly he'd been outplayed. Excellent, I said, collecting the signed documents. Sarah will now escort you to individual conference rooms where you'll begin your depositions with the SEC representatives. As they were led away, I turned to the board. And now, let's discuss the future of Reynolds Technologies. The next hour was spent outlining our path forward. New corporate governance structures, enhanced compliance protocols, and a complete restructuring of the executive team. The board, having witnessed the precision with which I'd handled the crisis, approved every proposal unanimously. One last thing, I added as the meeting drew to a close. I wanted on record that every employee affected by the previous management's discrimination will be reviewed for reinstatement or compensation. The board's approval was immediate. After all, it was a small price to pay to avoid the publicity nightmare we'd saved them from. Later, in my office, Sarah brought me the preliminary depositions. They're singing like canaries, she reported. Each trying to save himself by incriminating the others. I scanned the documents, noting how quickly they turned on each other. Make sure their confessions are properly recorded and witnessed. We don't want any retractions later. Through my window, I could see James being escorted to his car, his career and reputation in tatters. His lawyer was already on the phone, presumably trying to salvage what he could from the wreckage of his client's life. Their trading records? I asked Sarah. Being combed through by forensic accountants. Initial estimates suggest they'll each have to repay several million in irregular gains. I nodded, turning back to my desk. The company stock was up 15% on news of the governance changes. The business papers were already hailing Reynolds Technologies as a model of corporate accountability. Schedule a company-wide meeting for tomorrow, I instructed. It's time to rebuild what they tried to destroy. Sarah paused at the door. Was it worth it? I thought about years of watching them crush dreams, bully subordinates and mock anyone they deemed inferior. About all the careers they'd derailed and lives they'd impacted. Ask the people who'll get their jobs back, I replied. Ask the women who won't have to face harassment. Ask everyone who believed they'd never face justice. After all, the best revenge isn't just about punishment. It's about ensuring positive change for those left behind. The days following the board meeting unfolded like a carefully orchestrated domino effect. Each morning brought new revelations, each afternoon new consequences, and each evening new victories. James's criminal defense lawyer quit, Sarah announced, entering my office with the morning briefing. Apparently, he tried to recant parts of his confession. I pulled up the surveillance feed from his deposition room. Send them the video of his voluntary confession. And the one where his lawyer advised him of his rights 3 separate times. The fallout was spreading beyond our corporate walls. 3 other companies had launched internal investigations after discovering similar patterns of misconduct during James and his friends' previous employments. Their professional networks were crumbling as former allies rushed to distance themselves. Michael attempted suicide, Sarah reported quietly, placing a news clipping on my desk. Is he stable? Yes. Under psychiatric observation. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Make sure his medical bills are covered anonymously. And have HR fast-track the reviews of anyone he harassed or discriminated against. The media was having a field day. Business journals were running in-depth exposés on toxic corporate culture. Women's magazines wanted interviews about breaking the glass ceiling. Tech blogs were analyzing how the phantom CEO had orchestrated such a perfect takedown. James's mother gave an interview, Sarah said, pulling up the video. I watched as the woman who had once boasted about her successful son now tearfully apologized for enabling his behavior. The interview ended with her announcing a donation to workplace harassment prevention programs. His wife filed for divorce this morning, along with the wives of 3 others. They're all claiming they had no knowledge of the financial fraud. I turned to the window watching the city below. Somewhere out there, James was probably sitting in his mother's guest room, watching his world implode. His assets were frozen, his reputation destroyed, his marriage over, and his future a maze of legal proceedings. The reinstatement interviews are going well, Sarah continued, changing topics. 12 former employees have already accepted offers to return. Among them was Jennifer Chin, no relation, a brilliant programmer James had driven out 2 years ago. She was now heading our new AI division, her expertise finally recognized and valued. The Thompson account doubled their contract with us. They're impressed with our new leadership and transparency initiatives. A notification popped up on my screen. Another former employee had gone public with their story. This time, it was someone from James's previous company, describing a pattern of behavior that stretched back years. The SEC investigation is expanding, Sarah reported. They're looking into every company they've ever worked for. I pulled up our secure database, reviewing the evidence we'd gathered. Send the investigators everything we have. Every document, every recording, every trail of misconduct. The professional fallout was just the beginning. Social consequences were proving equally devastating. Country club memberships revoked. Board positions at charities resigned. Private school admissions for their children suddenly waitlisted. They're being blackballed from every executive position on the East Coast, Sarah noted, scrolling through her tablet. The whistleblower websites are full of stories about them. I reviewed the latest photos from our surveillance team. James, unshaven and disheveled, trying to meet with former colleagues who suddenly had urgent appointments elsewhere. Michael leaving his psychiatrist's office haunted and hollow. The others each dealing with their downfall in their own desperate ways. Peterson sent his final report, Sarah added. The transition team has completely restructured their former departments. Productivity is up 40%. It wasn't just about numbers. The office atmosphere had transformed. Without the toxic influence of James and his friends, employees were flourishing. Innovation was rising, collaboration improving, and the fear that had permeated certain departments was dissipating. Their legal teams are requesting another meeting, Sarah said. They want to discuss additional cooperation in exchange for lighter penalties. Too late. I turned back to my desk. They had their chance at amnesty. Actions have consequences. A message flashed on my screen, James attempting to contact me through a new email account. Like all his previous attempts, it was automatically archived for the legal team and blocked. His personal belongings? I asked. Still in storage. His mother's house is apparently too small for his essential collection of luxury items. I thought about the way he used to mock people for shopping at department stores, for driving modest cars, for living within normal means. Now he was learning the true value of things, and the cost of arrogance. The class action lawsuit is proceeding, Sarah updated. 300 former employees have joined. Each day brought new stories. Careers derailed, opportunities denied, lives impacted by their systematic discrimination and abuse of power. The lawsuit wasn't just about money, it was about accountability and acknowledgement. And the press? Still requesting interviews. They're particularly interested in how you maintain the phantom CEO persona while being married to James. I shook my head. That story would stay private. A reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch most carefully. Schedule the follow-up board meeting for next week, I instructed. It's time to implement phase 2 of our corporate restructuring. As Sarah left, I reviewed the latest surveillance photos one last time. 5 men once so powerful and arrogant, now reduced to shadows of their former selves. Their fall from grace wasn't just professional. It was complete and irreversible. After all, the true fallout of revenge isn't just in the initial explosion. It's in the radioactive aftermath that ensures nothing can ever grow in its place. 6 months had passed since the day I revealed myself as Reynolds Technologies CEO. Standing at my office window watching the autumn leaves scatter across the corporate plaza, I reflected on how completely the landscape had changed. The final numbers are in, Sarah said, entering with her tablet. Quarterly profits up 60%. Employee satisfaction at record highs. And the class action settlement was approved this morning. I nodded, turning from the window. The settlement would ensure that everyone harmed by James and his cohorts received proper compensation. More importantly, it had forced a public acknowledgement of their actions. And our former executives? Sarah's fingers danced across her screen. James is working as a junior sales associate at a small electronics store in Ohio. His mother's influence got him the job, but he's already on probation for attitude issues. The mighty had fallen indeed. The man who once mocked others' careers was now struggling to meet basic sales quotas. Michael? Still in therapy but doing better. He's published an online apology and is working with workplace harassment prevention groups. Seems genuine, actually. I picked up a framed magazine cover from my desk. Last month's Business Week featuring Reynolds Technologies transformation. The article had praised our new corporate culture without ever mentioning the scandal that prompted it. The others. One's teaching business classes at a community college focusing on corporate ethics, ironically. Another is working at his brother-in-law's construction company. The last one moved to Alaska to find himself. Their falls had been spectacular, but that wasn't what I thought about most. Instead, I focused on the changes their departure had enabled. Jennifer's AI division? Sarah smiled. 3 new patents filed this quarter. The team she rebuilt is revolutionizing our entire approach to software development. Throughout the company, similar transformations had occurred. Departments once ruled by fear now buzzed with innovation. Employees previously sidelined were leading breakthrough projects. The toxic culture James and his friends had fostered was being replaced by something genuinely collaborative. The Thompson account sent this over, Sarah said, placing a bottle of champagne on my desk. They're impressed with the new project proposals. Jennifer's team apparently solved a problem they've been struggling with for years. I thought about all the times James had dismissed Jennifer's ideas, mocked her suggestions, made her doubt her own brilliance. Now she was leading our most profitable division. Any recent contact attempts? Sarah checked her logs. James tried to reach out through LinkedIn last week. His profile still lists him as our former VP of operations. Though anyone who searches his name gets quite a different story. The internet never forgets. Every article about workplace harassment, every exposé on corporate fraud, every cautionary tale about abuse of power. Their names appeared in all of them. The documentary crew is requesting another interview, Sarah added. They're calling it Glass Ceiling, Shattered. Focus is on corporate transformation and women in leadership. I shook my head. Direct them to our successful division heads instead. Jennifer, Maria, Sophia. The ones doing the real work of rebuilding. My phone buzzed. A message from James's mother. Since her public apology, she'd become an unlikely ally in corporate culture reform, speaking about the dangers of enabling toxic behavior. I'd anonymously funded her speaking tour. The board meeting is in 10 minutes, Sarah reminded me. They want to discuss international expansion. I gathered my materials, pausing at the office door. The nameplate read simply, Alexandra Chen Su. No more shadows, no more masks, no more pretense. It's been exactly 6 months, Sarah noted, falling into step beside me. Any regrets? I thought about James's last words to me in the boardroom, his final attempt at manipulation. I really did love you, you know. No, I replied, striding toward the conference room. No regrets. Just lessons learned. The lessons weren't just about revenge. They were about power, responsibility, and the obligation to use both wisely. About creating something better from the ashes of destruction. The employee mentorship program has a waiting list, Sarah reported as we walked. Turns out people are eager to learn when they're not afraid of being mocked. That was the real victory. Not the fall of James and his friends, but the rise of everyone they tried to keep down. Every promoted employee, every implemented idea, every positive change was a testament to what could grow when you removed the poison from the soil. One last thing, Sarah said as we reached the boardroom. HR reported 0 harassment complaints this quarter. First time in company history. I paused, letting that sink in. The human cost of James's leadership style had been immeasurable. But the healing was measurable, quantifiable, real. Inside the boardroom, the board members were already seated. These meetings were different now, more collaborative, more focused on long-term growth than short-term profits. The fear of speaking up had been replaced by the excitement of possibility. Shall we begin? I took my seat at the head of the table, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of vindication in equal measure. After all, the best revenge isn't just about destroying what was wrong. It's about building something better in its place. And as I looked around at what Reynolds Technologies had become, I knew that the real victory wasn't in James's fall. It was in everyone else's rise. Let's talk about the future, I said, opening my folder. Because that's what remained after revenge. Not the satisfaction of destruction, but the responsibility of creation. And I was ready for both.